Alright, welcome everybody to part 2 of Mix versus Mix, where me and my buddy Sam are doing a mix of the same song and comparing our different approaches and different techniques. Today we're going to take a look at the Mixbus. So, my Mixbus on this is pretty simple. So, what I'll do is I'll play the track, I'll bypass the Mixbus in and out, and I'll kind of show you the settings on the plugins as I'm doing that. And we'll talk about it more at the end. One thing to note is that this pre-master channel here, right before the stereo out, is also kind of part of my Mixbus chain, if you will. So let's go ahead and listen to some audio examples. We'll look at the plugins, and then we'll talk about it more at the end. Okay, so I think you could notice that there's a big difference being made when I take out this Mixbus chain, especially the one actually on the stereo bus. Let's talk about the pre-master first, though. So the pre-master here, and this is something that I do almost all the time on my mixes, unless I want something to be really dry, I'll add a reverb on the entire mix. So this is the slate reverb, and if you haven't tried this, you need to get your hands on this because this thing is incredible. You can see I barely have it mixed in, only 13%, so it's barely, I mean, it's just giving it a sense of space. You could hear that it doesn't make that much of a difference when I bypass it, but enough to make it sound like it was recorded in one space. So that's really cool. So let's talk about just the model here first. So if you don't know, the Slate Reverb has many different models, Lexicon 480, so on. But the one that I'm using is Bricacity, which is a very expensive reverb if you get the hardware. And it's also one of the ones that all the pros use, and it's very, very amazing. And I really, really like the presets on here. This Lush Church one is really, really nice sounding. So that's what I used. You can see that the decay is actually pretty long, 2.24 seconds. And that's me dialing that back quite a bit. Um, let's talk about some of these settings up here. I increased the pre-delay all the way because I didn't want it to really like muddy up the mix. And I added some chorus just to make that reverb tail a little more interesting. Up the width a little bit. And then I came over here to the EQ and took a lot of the low end out, left the mids alone, and rolled off some of the highs. So that just really makes it sound like it was recorded in one space and gives it some sense of imaging right off the bat. From there, I added on a EQ here using mid-side mode in linear phase mode as well, because I didn't want to affect any phase relationship. What I did was I rolled off a lot of the low end all the way up to 265 hertz on the sides. I would never do this on a full mix on the mid section or in the middle of the mix, but on the sides, I don't really need all that low end. So that really gives me a lot of headroom. And you can see I'm using a gentle slope, 6 dB per octave. As for what I did here was I made a 1 dB cut at 500, also to just kind of clean up some of that muddiness. Here on band 5, you can see that there's some more mid-side stuff going here. And what I did was I came over here and I did a cut at 2.2 kilohertz. I did a cut on the sides and a boost in the mid section to kind of focus that vocal in the center less than on the sides. And then here on the mid, I cut just a real gentle roll off at 20K. And then I did a high shelf at 8K. Just to give it a little bit of air on the top there. Okay, moving over to the actual master bus. I'm using a console emulation using the SSL, and I'm hitting it hard, real hard. It just, when you do that with this console, it just really wakes everything up and makes everything a little more aggressive, but in a nice way. I got rid of some of that digital sound here at 4K. Sometimes that's just real nasally and just sounds digital to me. So this is a great EQ to do that with. Just taking about a dB out of that. Then some of the muddiness here at 400. Like I said, I wanted to make this, if you watch the overview video, I wanted to make this mix punchy. So on my master bus here, of course, I added some of the punchy from the punchy EQ from the custom series lift. And to bring the vocal forward a little bit more, I added some the presence from here on the high lift. So this almost always lives on my master bus now. It used to be the SSL and the Neve, but once I got the custom series, pretty much stayed there. So going over to my Mixbus compressor, pretty much I have all of them engaged, but the only one doing compression is the FG Red. I just have the FG Gray on for the transformer sound that's in there, and then some of the tube sound from the FG Mu. And a lot of times with this, I'll actually dial the mix back, but to me, it kind of tightened up the bottom end in a nice way, having it on 100%. So as far as the FG Red, using the high pass sidechain at 50 hertz, so that way the kick doesn't affect it too much. I'm adding some drive because this is the magic knob on this compressor. Auto release, and this attack looks like it's really fast for being a mix bus, but I saw Steven Slate do this in his tutorial video, and I figured, well, I might as well try it out. If it's good enough for him, it's good enough for me. And he was right. This is a really great setting. Ratio of just 2-to-1, and I'm really just knocking off like 1 to 2 dB of gain reduction here. And I actually didn't add any makeup gain because I feel like this plugin kind of already adds a little bit of gain in general. So to me, it's already kind of made up already. So this is a great, great plugin. You've probably seen me use this a lot if you watch my videos. And then virtual tape machine, as you probably could have guessed, 15 inches per second to kind of tame that high end, but also fatten up the bottom end. And my favorite tape type here is this 456. And since it's on the master bus here, I have it on the half-inch 2-track. And yeah, I just dialed back the input so that way it's hitting this at the loudest point at about 0 dB. And I'm using the FGX at the end, but we don't really need to talk about this until like the very last video. So if you want to take a look at the settings, go ahead and pause the video here. You can see that the ITP is moved up maybe like +2 or something like that. But yeah, other than that, we'll talk about this later. So go ahead and take a look if you want, and we'll go ahead and close it. And you can see that the maximizer is here, but it's not being used. This was just because I used this mix in a different video where I was demonstrating this maximizer, and kind of A/B'd this between the stock Steinberg maximizer and the FGX. The Steinberg one holds its own, but I actually like the tone of the FGX better. But you know, it's just one of those things where you got to experiment a little bit. So I know this video was a little bit long-winded, but I really wanted to go in depth on these things because I know that Mixbus is something that people always ask about. So I think it was a pretty simple setup, but as you could hear in the audio examples, it's already making a huge difference. That pulls a lot of the weight right there in making it punchy, and as well as imaging, which if you watch the overview, those were like my two main things that I wanted to do. So before I ramble on anymore, thank you so very much for watching. Please give this video a like if you enjoyed it. If you didn't, you could give it a thumbs down. That's okay. You're entitled to your opinion, as I always say. If you really like this video, please subscribe. I would greatly appreciate that. Thank you so very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.